Hi everybody, this is Megan Garza with Megan Garza Wellness. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner, health coach, and yoga instructor, and you're listening to the Restoring Balance podcast. More women than ever are now dealing with digestive, hormonal, and skin issues and are not finding satisfactory answers or results. On this show, I teach you how to implement holistic lifestyle, dietary, and mindset strategies to help you get smooth digestion and balanced hormones to reclaim your health, feel confident about your decisions, and to finally live life on your terms. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Restoring Balance podcast. This is episode 23 and the title of today's episode is ADHD, the gut microbiome, and natural solutions. So before we get into today's episode, if you're a fan of the show, this is just a reminder of how you can support the podcast by giving it a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple Podcast, which helps the algorithm get my show to other listeners who would benefit from it just like you. Also, don't forget to sign up for my newsletter where you'll receive weekly relevant tips to help you optimize your gut and hormone health and also receive any updates about upcoming events or announcements. You can sign up for my newsletter by clicking the link in the show notes or heading to my website at megangarzawellness.com, and you can wait for the pop-up or sign up under the freebies tab. Without further ado, let's dive in. The topics that I'm going to be covering today are what is ADHD typically defined as? So what are the symptoms? How are the symptoms clinically looked at? My personal background and struggle with ADHD. Also the issue with overdiagnosis and also the environment that we live in and how it can potentially contribute to ADHD-like symptoms. Neurotransmitters, the microbiome, and the gut-brain axis, what you are probably here for. And also what causes ADHD and how to manage these symptoms naturally, because if you are anything like me, you are probably not going to be wanting to take medication long-term or at all. And this is what I'm going to be providing you with some solutions to help you manage these symptoms a lot better without having to turn to synthetic medication. So first, let's go over the definition of ADHD. So ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, and it's typically viewed as a disorder of the brain. So symptoms can include difficulty concentrating, poor organizational skills, forgetfulness, impulsiveness, poor planning, restlessness, and so much more. So it really is, this is kind of just a short list of what the criteria for the DSM for ADHD actually is, because it really is just a super long list of other symptoms that can be present for the disorder. And now real quickly, I want to get into my ADHD diagnosis story, where my bone to pick with all of this stuff really is, and why I'm so passionate about natural solutions and also talking about medical abuse that does happen within this system. So for starters, I am going to say that my view on this whole topic is going to be biased because I do have my own personal experiences that I went through with this. So with that being said, just please keep that in mind. And I do want to remain objective with this, but for my story, it is going to be subjective because it was obviously something that happened to me. So my outlook is going to be from a very personal perspective, clearly. So I was diagnosed when I was around 3.5 years old. I guess that I had ADHD. I don't really believe that young children like this can display symptoms of ADHD. I think it's something that is much larger that is going on in the child. So it could be something with food, or maybe it's just a misdiagnosis like PTSD or anxiety, or even just normal kid behavior that is being viewed as something that needs to be stopped. Because kids are goofy, they are silly and hyper, and they just want to run around and do what they want to do. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But I feel like the way that I was diagnosed was BS, because I'm not exactly sure how you can say that a 4-year-old child needs medication. I personally think that's very wrong. And if you're listening to this and if you have a similar experience or a completely opposite experience, that's totally okay too. You know, we're just here, I'm here to share things and here to shed light on some medical abuse that did happen to me, because I know that I'm not the only one. And I'm sure someone listening to this in the future is going to say, wow, you know, I went through something very similar. So that's what I'm really hoping to accomplish here with this short little segment in the podcast. And with all that being said, as an adult, I've been able to manage my symptoms very well. Am I a little bit more distracted and forgetful than some people? Yeah, but who's to say that that's not just my personality? Because I really don't meet a lot of the criteria that I used to. And my symptoms have improved tremendously just by addressing things like gut health, toxic load, mental health, and everything in between that I'm going to talk about on this episode. And this really goes to show you that there are things that you can do to manage your ADHD and your symptoms and improve them naturally. And something that really irks me a lot is the fact that the system that we live in is not designed for different people with different personalities. Some people simply cannot sit still for hours at a time. And does that mean that there's something wrong with us? I mean, not necessarily, because some people want to move around. Some people are just more naturally forgetful and they need help. But then again, you know, you have people on the more extreme end of the spectrum where their life just feels like absolute chaos because of ADHD. So, you know, that's why there needs to be a balance in this conversation. That's what I'm aiming for. But what I'm getting at is that there's no room for people to be individuals. You know, if you're different, then you are going to be cast out. You are going to have a label put on you, and you're going to need a medication for this to fix this label that we put on you. And it's just this crazy system. And I think it's so funny that I'm even saying this as I'm pursuing my bachelor's degree in psychology at the time of this episode is being recorded. You know, my views are just very different than the traditional ones that are held. And it's just because I see the game, and I see that the more diagnosis that big pharma gives, the more money that they make. So this is really where overdiagnosis comes into play, because it's very easy when you are looking for something to be able to find it. Because what's the old saying? If you have a hammer in your hand, everything's going to look like a nail. And that's kind of the limited view that a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists and even just doctors in general have with certain things. Like a lot of times, maybe they'll have a specific diagnosis or way of diagnosing that they prefer, and this can lead to overdiagnosis. So, you know, there's a lot more factors to look into with what we are looking at here, rather than just it's an imbalance of neurotransmitters, because that's the traditional viewpoint of all of this, that ADHD is an imbalance of neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. And there's really so much more to ADHD and even any other mental health diagnosis than just an imbalance of neurotransmitters. So there's been a lot of talk recently about the link between gut bacteria imbalances and ADHD, and I'm really glad that this is starting to become more mainstream, because it's something that has been talked about for many decades, and it seems like more people are starting to catch wind of this, which is great, because more research does need to be put into this, because I think it's a very important topic to study, so that way we can get a comprehensive view of what is really going on in the body, and not such a narrow-minded one of chemical imbalance, end of story, because that's only part of the picture. Something really interesting to note is that yeast overgrowth has actually been associated with an increased diagnosis of ADHD. And also antibiotic use during pregnancy increases the chances of the offspring being diagnosed with ADHD. So, you know, there really is a connection here between the gut and mental health. That leads me to my next point about the gut-brain axis. The gut is known as the second brain, and it also has its own nervous system. The gut sends messages to the brain and vice versa, so they both communicate to each other. First off, there are billions of microorganisms in the body known as microbiota, and they and their genes, known as the microbiome, are responsible for numerous biological functions. So it can help with gastrointestinal and non-gastrointestinal functions. Some of the gastrointestinal functions that it helps with is that the microbiome will play a role in metabolism and the absorption of nutrients like carbohydrates, bile acids, and vitamins. Some non-gut functions that the microbiome help with is maturation of immune cells, the neuroendocrine system, which goes to show you how interconnected the microbiome is with the entire body and how important it is. The gut-brain axis is the bidirectional communication between the gut microbiome and the central nervous system. So the three main pathways that make up this axis are the neuroendocrine pathway, the immune pathway, and the nerve pathway. The microbiome is involved in these different pathways, and they're also implicated with schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, bipolar, and even autism. And this could potentially be why there are so many mentally ill people in society. Maybe they are dealing with some severe intestinal inflammation. I mean, you think of how long the standard American diet has been around, how many mothers and grandmothers were eating the standard American diet, and how many people are still eating it, and how bad this is for us, and the crazy internal environment that it is creating inside of us. A really excellent book that I read a very long time ago when I was first introduced to this concept was Gut and Psychology Syndrome by Natasha Campbell-McBride. I will put this in the show notes. It is a fantastic read. She has helped so many people, so many clients over the decades of her practicing with these problems with autism and ADHD and schizophrenia and depression, fix their issues because she's addressing gut function and gut health. And if you've been in the holistic space, I'm sure you've heard of the GAPS diet. It was actually created by Natasha Campbell-McBride to help her patients with these issues that they were dealing with, which is incredible because how effective it truly is for people who are in need of serious therapeutic healing. So I really want to emphasize that gut issues and other internal issues like blood sugar dysregulation and mineral imbalances can lead to mental health disorders and challenges. So it's not only caused by a neurotransmitter imbalance. So really looking at the whole picture here rather than just one-dimensional. Another player here would be the vagus nerve and the fact that it is involved in the process. So it's one of your cranial nerves. The vagus nerve is one of your cranial nerves that controls digestion, heart rate, and respiratory rate. And inflammation and dysbiosis can potentially impair the vagus nerve's ability to function properly and communicate to the brain. This can lead to leaky gut, which, for those of you who don't know what this is, it is when the normally tight junctions in the intestines become larger and more permeable, which then allows food and other toxins to leak into your bloodstream, thus causing inflammation. So leaky gut is a huge component for ADHD because it can lead to inflammation and nutrient deficiencies. And also if the vagus nerve cannot properly communicate, your gut and your concentration is going to be impaired. So to sum all of that up, mental health and gut health are correlated and they need to be taken seriously. If there's dysfunction in one, there could possibly be dysfunction in the other, which is why it's very important to address all of these factors rather than just here's a pill. And I'm not saying, if you take a pill for this, like you're the worst person in the world or you're a failure or whatever, but also acknowledging that these other factors do need to be addressed and they cannot just be left on the back burner with the stove on and just turning a blind eye to it, because that is going to lead to more fire. And if you are on pills for ADHD, or if you don't want to take pills for ADHD and you've just been managing it on your own and you don't know exactly what to do, listen up, because what I'm about to share is not some quick fix. It is not a pill. It is not going to be something that you can just switch on and then tomorrow you're going to be all better and it's going to be perfect, because there's no such thing as perfect. And it's really just about progress. And just for a quick disclaimer, I'm not telling you to stop taking your medication. This is something that you should be talking to your doctor about and not taking medical advice, because this is just for educational and entertainment purposes. But with that said, there are natural ways to manage the symptoms that you might be experiencing. So the first one would be to reduce your toxic load and to help your body detox more efficiently. If you're interested in learning more about detoxification and understanding and supporting your detoxification pathways better, I have an entire episode on this, episode 21. I will link it in the show notes so that way you can learn all about this and to optimize your detoxification. But for a quick synopsis, toxic load is when your body is unable to efficiently remove toxins from your body via the elimination and detoxification pathways. Some of the biggest places that you're going to find a lot of toxins would be environmental toxins. So also things like heavy metals that are found in certain foods and vaccines. The environmental toxins I talked about just a moment ago, like air pollution. So things like air fresheners, car exhaust, and even conventional household cleaners and health and beauty products. I have a whole episode detailing environmental toxins, so I will link that in the show notes for you as well. I can't remember exactly what episode it is, but if you don't know much about environmental toxins and you want to learn more, go check that episode out, because I cover so many things in that episode that I just cannot get into on this episode. And lastly, prescription medication and alcohol overuse can cause a big toxic load. So these things have compounding effects on the body, and some people are more sensitive than others, which is why it's important to be aware of where you live, what you're surrounding yourself with, what you're breathing in, what you're eating, all those good things. So just really lowering your toxic load and removing environmental toxins as much as possible and allowing your detoxification pathways to function properly by optimizing them. Next up, we have sedentary lifestyles. So I'm sure that you've heard that exercise has a ton of benefits and that people who have ADHD can benefit from exercise. And this is something I'm a huge fan of, because I've noticed that when I don't exercise, I'm way more easily distracted. My concentration is a lot worse. And this is true for a lot of people, even people that do not have ADHD. Just in general, focus and concentration can improve with exercise, but this is even more true for individuals with ADHD. So if you have this condition, if you have ADHD, please get some regular exercise, because it is going to improve the amount of endorphins and dopamine that is released. And these are the same hormones that are said to be imbalanced. Also, unhealthy pseudo-food, so ultra-processed foods, frankenfoods, whatever you want to call it, these are a killer for your concentration, and they make ADHD so much worse. There have been ingredients that are in American food that is passed by the FDA. It's allowed in, like food dyes that have been linked to hyperactivity. So this is why it's extremely imperative to be eating a nutrient-dense, whole foods, minimally processed diet for relief from ADHD symptoms. Also addressing any nutrient deficiencies if you've been under a lot of stress, or if you've been pregnant, or if you've been on a lot of medication, or you've abused alcohol, or you've just been living in this modern world that we are in. There are potential nutrient deficiencies that you are dealing with. So making sure that you are getting these addressed properly is going to do so much good for your ability to concentrate. And it's also worth noting that it's not just enough to eat an anti-inflammatory diet and call it a day. Because if you are dealing with digestive dysfunction and you are requiring things like stomach acid help, or improving your bile production, or even enzyme release, or you're not able to be parasympathetic when you are eating and you're not able to get into that rest and digest state, your body is not going to be digesting and processing these nutrients that it needs to. So really working on both of these things at the same time is going to help. So if you're eating an anti-inflammatory diet, make sure that your digestive health is in good standing. And then next we have circadian rhythm disruptions. So this is something that I see a lot of people dealing with. They'll come to me and say that they have trouble concentrating and that their ADHD is bad and they don't know what's going on. And we get to talking and turns out they are not sleeping properly. They're waking up multiple times in the night. They cannot follow a good bedtime. They are going to bed at, 12, 1, 2 in the morning. And this is greatly impacting their body's ability to carry out certain biological functions that are regulated by your circadian rhythm. And if there's a circadian rhythm disruption, this also is going to impair gut health. If you're not sleeping, inflammation is going to increase, and then bodily processes are not going to be performed efficiently. So if you don't have a bedtime, please stick to a bedtime, preferably before 10 o'clock or at 10. No later than that, if possible. And also, going outside for sunrise, midday, and sunset is going to do so much to help you sleep and to also regulate these circadian rhythm processes. Fatty acid deficiency is also something that is really common in individuals with ADHD, and this can be because maybe they're eating excessive amount of polyunsaturated fats like sunflower oil, canola oil, cottonseed oil, or the like, so just seed oils in general, and this is why you hear that omega-3s can help people with ADHD. So taking a supplement like cod liver oil or eating more olive oil or eating fatty fish or meats and butter can really improve your fatty acids and kind of help balance that. This also goes back to ensuring that your digestion is in good standing, because if you are dealing with poor gallbladder or liver health, your body is not going to be able to emulsify those fats. Next, we have neurofeedback. So I'm not an expert on neurofeedback. I've never personally done neurofeedback, but according to Psychology Today, it is a therapeutic invention that provides immediate feedback from a computer-based program that assesses a client's brainwave activity. So if you have access to neurofeedback in your community, give it a try because it has been proven to help people who have ADHD. Also, something that is not talked about that can be triggering to people who are more predisposed to restlessness and inability to focus is the fact that our environments are just really boring. And I'm not just talking about for children, I mean adults too. Like, there is such a lack of creativity that we are dealing with, and it is so harmful to our bodies, to our minds, to our souls. And this is why it's so important to just find ways to bring creativity into your life, which could include things like drawing or taking photos or going outside or stretching or just leaning into any hobby that you find interesting and creative. It is going to make a world of a difference in how you feel and your outlook on life. Another thing that can be really detrimental for focus is just not having good time management and focus skills. And I know you might be thinking, well, yeah, duh, it's ADHD. Like, I don't have those skills. But therapy can be a super effective tool to help you gain these skills and strategies. So something that has been really helpful for me, and I know it's helpful for a lot of other people. Some of these things you can take or leave depending on what works for you, but things like setting reminders can be essential for helping you get things done on time and not forgetting. Also, setting up a distraction-free zone can make a world of a difference. So if you know that you have work on your computer that you have to do, leave your phone in the other room. Put a blocker on your computer so that way you cannot reach other sites that you know you're going to be distracted by. And also set a timer. So block off time for when you are working and when you are resting. So maybe do 45 minutes on, 15 minutes off. Also, certain musics like binaural beats can be really stimulating to the brain to be able to put it into that focus mode. So if you find that that works for you, definitely give it a try and stick with it because it really works. And I think that there is not enough emphasis on how much sound can actually help us. And lastly, for the time management skills, I think just less screen time in general is going to provide so many benefits because we are just overstimulated and over distracted. And this is what I feel is leading to a lot of overdiagnosis, is just overstimulated individuals going to the doctor or even self-diagnosing that they have this condition, when in reality, they could potentially just be dealing with a lot of overstimulation. And if you are overstimulated, you are not going to be able to focus because your brain is going to be everywhere but where you need to be. And the last tip is for meditation to help restructure the brain, because meditation puts you in a state of different brain waves to help you stay more focused and calm. And I know it can be really difficult at first when you are trying these things, but guided meditations can be so beneficial because you have that extra help of someone basically walking you through how to do these things, rather than you just sitting there distracted and thinking, what am I doing? This is boring. This is lame. I can't sit still. I'm so up in the air. I'm so hyper. But when you have a guided meditation, it really takes things to a whole nother level. And this just allows you to slow down and tune into your breath. And it's ultimately just going to help you with clarity and focus and attention. And with all that said, if you are struggling with symptoms like poor concentration, forgetfulness, poor organization skills, and restlessness, and don't know how to practically implement all these nutrition and lifestyle changes that I just talked about, book a complimentary nutrition consultation with me. On this call, we'll discuss your concerns and wellness goals to see how nutritional therapy can help you achieve your goals. So whether you're dealing with gut dysfunction, hormone imbalance, skin issues, or even concentration issues, nutritional therapy can help you by utilizing sustainable nutrition and lifestyle and mindset strategies that will holistically look at the root cause. I'll put the link to book a free consultation with me in the show notes. So all in all, there are many factors of health and layers that just get completely overlooked. Holistic health views the body as a whole rather than just separate parts. So if there's dysfunction in one area of the body or mind, it's going to lead to dysfunction in another area. So looking at the body as a whole is going to give you a more comprehensive and accurate understanding and detailed explanation of what is truly going on. So to wrap up this episode, the biggest takeaways are that understanding that ADHD and other mental challenges and disorders are not solely caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain, and there are other contributing factors to these problems. The gut is also known as the second brain, and we have a gut-brain axis that connects and communicates with each other. The microbiome and gut communicate via multiple pathways. And lastly, there are holistic and natural strategies to manage ADHD symptoms. So just remember to take it step by step and to keep learning on your wonderful journey of wellness. Well, that's all the time that we have for. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. Today we talked about what ADHD is, how overdiagnosis is harming society, the gut microbiome, and natural ADHD strategies. You can expect new episodes every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just a quick reminder again of how you can support the podcast and stay in the loop. You can sign up for my newsletter so that way you can be notified every time I post a new podcast episode, make any new announcements about my services and how you can work with me, and also receive weekly relevant tips for digestion and hormones so you can optimize your health. You can find the link to sign up for my newsletter in the show notes, or head to my website at megangarzawellness.com and you can wait for the pop-up or sign up under the freebies tab. Again, I just want to thank you so much for listening to this week's topic. Take care, everyone, and until next time.